Hi guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. This video will be another Python basic video and it's part 3. In this video, I'll be discussing about the concept of Python loops and the different loops that Python has and some example that uses loops. So what is a loop in common programming languages? Well, a loop is used to iterate over a certain element. Specifically for Python loops, it iterates over a certain element definitely or indefinitely. Python has two main loops, indefinite, so it's a while loop, and a definite loop, so it uses a for loop. An indefinite loop or a while loop is to be used when a program doesn't know the amount of required iteration, so it is repeated until a condition is met. And for a definite loop, so a for loop, is to be used when the program knows when a loop starts and the amount of iterations that are required. So, for example, you can use an indefinite loop when you're reading numbers 1 to 10 and then you print it out in that sequential order. So yeah, how do you print 1 to 10 in that sequential order? So you start with a variable I and you initialize that variable I with 1. You then put that variable I into a while condition. So this says while I being 1 is less than or equal to 10. You then print I with an n statement, so that creates a new space after I is being printed, and then you increment I by 1, and let's see how that prints. While I is less than or equal to 10, print I with a new line after it got printed, and then afterwards you increment that by 1, and then this is repeated until 10 is met, so until a condition is met. And that's how you use a while loop in Python. I am also going to put a comment here that says what this for loop does, then print. And then I am going to come up with an example that is more realistic. So you're reading non-negative marks, negative marks, print the amount of entered marks and its average. Now, n will be the number of marks and total will be used to calculate the average mark at the end. And here I am going to introduce you to the concept of inputs. So you get the user inputs. And I'm going to have a variable named mark to be initialized with an input statement, so enter marks. And then I am going to have the input statement to be initialized with float, so only float numbers are able to be entered in here and not any other thing. So not a string, for example. And you will be using a while condition, so while the amount of entered marks are being inputted until a negative mark is entered. So realistically, you cannot have a negative score. So while mark is greater than 0.0, if it hits -1, then you would print the amount of entered marks and its average. So here I am going to first keep track of the amount of entered marks by incrementing the amount of entered marks by 1. And then you can have total incremented by mark. So mark is the input variable. And then this here is called a sentinel pattern. So you can have another float condition here that says enter mark. So this sentinel pattern is to be used when you are not sure of how many more iterations are needed until a condition is met. And at the end, you can print the number of entered marks here, with the n being incremented by 1 every time you enter a new mark. And now to calculate the average, you can say that if n, so the amount of entered marks is greater than 0, because you cannot calculate average just without any entered marks, then you print the average, the marks average, to be equal to total divided by n. So Total is the sum of entered marks, and n is the amount of entered marks. And then we can run it. Let's see. So say 80, 75, 90, 45, and then so as soon as you enter a negative mark, the program stops. You have entered 4 marks, so number of entered marks is 4, and the average mark is, so the total sum of these 4 entered marks divided by 4, and you get that as 72.5. And that's a realistic example of how to use a while loop. And I am going to write a few examples of using a definite loop, so a for loop. This example will be called count the amount of numbers in a given string. Yeah. Well, for this example, I would want to have an entered string, and I would want to count the amount of numbers that are inputted into that string. So let's say 1999 is 1 year before I was born. That would be a string. I'm going to write IE here, for example. 1999 is 1 year before I was born. That would have 5 numbers entered in this string. So how do I approach this? Well, first I need to have an input statement to take in a string. So string statement is equal to input enter a string. And to keep count of the amount of numbers that were entered in the string, I need to have a count. And then I need to separate all of the alphanumeric characters in the string and only keep track of the amount of entered numbers. So I need to have a for loop, and I would need to have it to be, so what this I does is that it goes into this entire string and it separates all of the elements within the string. So I would be 1, I would be 9, I would be 9, and I would be 9, and then it goes on like that. So for I in string statement, if I is a digit, so this is an if condition. So if I happens to be a number, I would have to increment count by 1, and then at the end I need to print count. So let's see here, enter a string. 1999 is 1 year before I was born. 5. I could also write something like amount of numbers in string. Then I could say something, I was born on the 27th of 2nd month, 2000. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are 7 numbers in this string. And there you go. Let's do one final example for the definite loop. So I'm going to comment this out. And then I'm going to introduce you to a concept of range. So now I want to print all of the numbers similar to a while loop here, but using a for loop. I want to print a range of numbers between 1 to 100 and not including 100, so 1 to 99. The way to do this would be first write what the program does. So print print a range of numbers between 1 and 100, but not including 100 in a given range. I would need to do the same thing here, but have between 1 to 100. So whenever I is in this range, I is being looped, and then I will need to increment my n by 1 every time that I is within this range and it's being looped. And then I would at the end need to print n. Let's see what it does. Yep. Hooray. So this means that n we started with 0, and then every time n is being looped within this range, n needs to be incremented by 1. So, and then at the end I printed, so when it reaches 99, it stops. But yeah, that's it for me for this episode. It's a relatively short episode because there were not a lot to talk about in regards to loop. But like always, the code will be uploaded onto GitHub and will be linked in the description down below. And yeah, I hope you guys learned a thing or two throughout this video. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys again real soon. Until then, stay safe and take care. Bye.